Hello, ladies and gentlemen. You know the theme song. You know what that means. It means it's time for the weekend, and it is time for the James Freel Show. I am your host, James Freel, and as always, I'm extremely happy to have you with me, ladies and gentlemen. We hopefully got a good show coming up for you. Same of the old, same stuff that you've grown accustomed to while listening to this show. To this show, rather. Got a few topics here. Got some news. Um, Pretty much given up on doing the whole housekeeping thing, but you know what? No, I haven't. I'm still gonna do housekeeping. So I guess I'm gonna go ahead and do that. You will notice that if there actually is a regular listener out there, the sound quality has changed. It has improved from last week. I was on the bubble whether or not I would be bootlegging the show this week. Turns out I won't have to due to certain circumstances. I'm back from Oxford, as I informed last week, and I am looking forward to doing this show now. But before we start, as always, we have to start with news for the uninformed. And I'm kind of sick of that name for news. That seems like I feel like I could come up with a better name. Tweet at me to see what I should go with as opposed to news. But until I come out with a better name than news for the uninformed, it will stick. And I'm going to stay with news for the uninformed. Alright, so our top story. Google testing a censored search engine just for China. Google testing a mobile version of its search engine that will adhere to the Chinese government's censorship demands, including the blocking of certain websites and search terms, according to multiple reports. China's government goes to great lengths to control its citizens' access to information on the internet, creating what's been dubbed the Great Firewall. Google removed its search engine service from China in 2010 and said that at the time it could no longer continue censoring our results in the country. That's interesting. I'd always heard about the Great Firewall. Always heard it'd be like the butt of jokes sometimes. Oh, it's okay. We love you, China. Just kidding. You can't see us because of the Great Firewall. That's amazing to me that they can maintain that. I wonder if it's similar to the deal they have in North Korea. I think North Korea just created its own internet entirely, which that's really going the extra mile. In sports, the Hall of Fame game was last night between the Chicago Bears and the Baltimore Ravens. The Pro Football Hall of Fame class of 2018 was inducted. Certain members included linebacker Ray Lewis, wide receiver Randy Moss, linebacker Brian Urlacher, and wide receiver Terrell Owens. Well, I'm starting to feel kind of old because I remember all those names when I was growing up. Very familiar to me. I got really into football. That became my sport in about 2006, 2007 was when I really got into it. I was aware of it prior, but yeah, that's all those names I recognize and remember seeing on the field. Interesting, Ray Lewis got in because he killed a guy. Just kidding. I don't know if he did or not. But a lot of people seem to think that he might have. Who knows? I think there's a few books I could read and become a little more informed on the issue. But this is news for the uninformed. Oh, I brought it around. All right. And finally, in pop culture, Harvey Weinstein seeks the dismissal of New York rape indictment, citing new email evidence. Weinstein's attorneys argue that newly unearthed emails from the Weinstein Company bankruptcy prove that the rape case against him in New York should be dropped. That's interesting. I gotta talk to my news guy about this. Doesn't really seem pop culture. I mean, I guess Harvey Weinstein was huge in the movie industry, but this seems more like a controversial issue, a little too controversial for everyone here at the James Freel Show, all two of us. But yeah, interesting to see how that pans out. I wonder what's got to be going through that guy's head, because from what I've heard, it sounds like he doesn't sound like the kind of guy who cares if the whole world hates him. But I'm sure he doesn't want to see the inside of a jail cell. But based on everything I've heard, it seems pretty undeniable that that's where he belongs. So it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. All right, so that was news for the uninformed for August 3rd, 2018. And now time for the original reason this show ever started, the rambling section. So, as I said last week, I hope you can't hear that coughing. I'm in my lousy apartment right now. My neighbors are all right, but hey, you win some, you lose some. So I got back from Oxford, back up north. I ended up having a good time there. I know I complained about it a lot while I was there, how it's a college town, how I don't fit in college towns. But overall, they've got some. Granted, they've got some great restaurants. College towns do have some great food. That's what makes it even worse because they make me fight the college environment if I want to get some decent food in the area. But they got some good stuff that isn't very friendly to your waistline, but nonetheless, it's good. But I'm back up here, and it's been pretty warm the past. Well, I mean, it is summer. On Tuesday, I got a call from a friend who actually once appeared on an episode of Conversations with James Freel. Check it out. Eventually, I promise it's coming. It is coming. And I got a phone call from him, well, a text, and he said, "Hey, are you busy the next few hours?" I thought, well, no, not really. I'd just gotten out of class, was done with work for the day, and I said, no, I'm not really busy. And he said, well, I'm going out to the river, bringing my scuba gear. Do you want to come with me? And at first I'm thinking, I don't know, that sounds like a huge commitment. And I asked him, how long is that going to take? And he told me, 1 or 2 hours. I'm like, okay, sounds good to me. Sounds like a good time. I love going out into urban areas. It turned out to be a much longer trip than I had anticipated. When he said the river, I wasn't quite sure what river he was referring to. And for the sake of anonymity, anonymity or whatever, we wound up driving. It was about a 40-50 minute drive, and it may or may not have taken me out of state. No, it didn't. But so we drive for a while. We're in a very rural area, and I love areas. I love driving out in urban areas because I'm afraid I'm gonna get into a car wreck every time I do, especially when I drove down to Oxford and drove on my way back. I just see all these houses that are out in the middle of nowhere. And that is the fully realized dream for me, to live out like that. When I'm done in school and I have my career, I don't care if it means having a 30-40 minute commute to work every day. I love being out in the middle of nowhere, and I want to be able to have a fire in my backyard and no one is bothered by it. Actually, I'm not into fireworks really, but I'd like to be able to set off fireworks and not really bother anyone. That's the ideal test that I would give for it. So we're on this beautiful interstate. I don't know if it's not an interstate, it was just a state highway, I think. But it's empty and all the roads are elevated, and we're seeing these big walls where you can see they had to drive through and engineer it. And these cornfields, and then we get off onto this gravel road and we drive on that for about 5 or 6 miles. And then we stop, and on the road there are all these cows and farm animals, and there's so many houses, and it's near a river, and a lot of these houses are built up on elevation to avoid being flooded if the river ever rises. But in order to get to this place where he wants to take his scuba equipment, we have to cut through a cornfield. And that was kind of a nightmare because I haven't been in a cornfield since elementary school. And I've never really been into a deep cornfield where the corn hasn't been... Every cornfield I always been in, I was on the outskirts and there was a path or it was dead, so it didn't matter. This was a thick cornfield, and this corn has like almost hair on it and it almost stings. And I felt like my face was all nicked up every time I would cut through it. When I felt like I just got done shaving with a way too old razor. But anyway, I get out and I look out, and there's this, you can tell whenever there's been a path in nature, there's this spot, and it's about a 12 to 15 feet drop. And I guess that's where people jump into the river. And it's not a fast river. This river's sort of an area where it goes from an intense river flow to stagnant for about maybe 600 or 700 yards, and then it goes back to being a big, intense current. So I walked down, and I wasn't really very prepared to be hiking out like this. My shoes got all muddy, but I got to tell you, it was completely worth it because I had an amazing time. Now he had all the scuba equipment, and I did go under a few times. I borrowed a mask, and his tank had two different mouth whatever. I didn't learn much about it. I don't even know if he's certified to be doing this sort of thing, but I think he had just bought this stuff secondhand. But basically what he does is he goes to this drop off and scavenger hunts and finds what he can find. And maybe that is a little shady. I don't think it's shady. I mean, it's finders keepers. People lost it. They took the risk. It's not like they were going to find it anyway. And even if we could, I don't think there's any moral obligation to do what you can't reasonably accomplish. And the chances of reasonably getting items found back to their owner, it just doesn't seem possible. He told me he'd gone under and searched. And the water is very murky. It's hard to see through. You have to get like 2 or 3 feet away if you want to see what's on the ground. So before he has found a GoPro before, which he was able to sell. He's found rings, nothing too elaborate, but I've never understood the carat system when it comes to gold. But something, whichever the one isn't as valuable, he's found before. Found about, so that was before. This time he found about 20 pairs of sunglasses. He found an Apple Watch. He found an iPhone 8 Plus. And he told me, hey, you can have that. I'm like, okay. But I've had it. I don't have high hopes for it. I got it right here. And I use an iPhone already, and it doesn't turn on. I've tried charging it, and I know it's supposed to be water resistant, but I'm not hopeful for it. Who knows how long it was underwater. But if you would never guess based on looking at it that it was underwater for, I mean, even it had to have been down there at least a week at the very, very shortest. I don't know. Maybe it was there yesterday. I don't know. But there's that, and it doesn't work. You wouldn't tell that it had been underwater for an extended amount of time. But this place was a very nice, it was almost like a little getaway. I really enjoyed my time there. The water was freezing cold from rain. I will tell you that. And it was extremely foggy, but again, the only thing that made me a little uncomfortable about being there is we were back on a dirt road, which was essentially a residential road, although almost every house on this road was a farmer, so I don't know if it's agricultural. I'm not sure what the deal is, but cars, there's not really anywhere to park. You have to pull off on the side of the road, and I guess people are aware when they see a car that they don't recognize and they know someone's back there. And in order to get there, you sort of have to trespass through the cornfield. I mean, we didn't do any damage to it or anything, but still, it was an interesting experience. I would highly recommend it. I love being just away. It was interesting when my friend went underwater. I told him, now, if you're drowning, there's nothing I can do. I'm not going to be able to find you, and even if I could see where you're at, there's no way I could drag your body up. He's like, yeah, that's fine. If the bubbles stop, that's a bad sign, but I understand there's really nothing you can do about it. So that was that, and he probably had the keys also, but man, why do I have to go to such dark thoughts like that whenever I do something fun? Oh well. So, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, just a second. I would like to speak I probably should have done this first. I would like to talk about I'd like to be real with anyone listening right now. Um, this show that I do, I say that in quotes because I understand it's not that big of a deal. And one could listen to this and view this and see it as sort of pathetic. And I just want anyone who's listening to this to realize that I am aware of that. And the truth is, I know I always say this is a hobby, but it does sound like I typically use that as a defense mechanism. So if anyone ever criticizes this or points out how silly or not well done or amateur or just kind of embarrassing it is, I can say, oh, well, it's just a hobby. It's not a big deal. But I guess I just really want to emphasize that because a lot of YouTube channels I've seen are devoted to roasting or exposing, rather, uh, projects like this. And I mean, I should be so lucky that they would. I actually would not like that if that happened. And it's hard to discuss this topic without making it sound like you're asking for it for the exposure. But I've probably said a lot of regrettable things on this platform. And the future of myself may find it regrettable. They may wish I may not have done this. I just hope that if someone is listening to this, they realize that I'm aware that this is quite really a cringy thing to be doing. That said, I do fully intend to keep doing this because I do have fun with them. They're a fun little project. I enjoy getting close friends over and just having conversations with them so that down the road I can listen to it and have that sentimental, nostalgic look back, and also just to hear how I would have changed because I have recordings of I do a voice log journal apart from this that I just keep private to myself. And I've been doing that for 5, 6 years now, and just hearing how much I've changed. And you may ask, well, why don't you just keep doing that with this? Why do you insist on uploading a show in a show format if you think it's going to be regrettable? And that's a very fair and true. That's a fair and reasonable question. And I think the answer is I have a lot of it's kind of like why you learn guitar sometimes and you record it and you upload it on YouTube, and it's a hobby, but there's always that person in the back of your head that thinks, wow, wouldn't it be cool if I could be a professional guitar player? Some of my biggest not role models, but just people I look up to and am entertained by and inspired by are all some sort of talk show host or a podcaster, and I am nowhere nearly as talented. I couldn't, it's not even fair to compare myself to them. But I guess that really explains it. I upload it for the same reason some people upload themselves playing a musical instrument, even though they may be very well aware that they're not very good at it. So that's the statement I wanted to make regarding that, regarding the situation I have here and the future of this, again, in quotes, show. So that's all I wanted to say. All right, all right, let's plow ahead here. Man, sometimes I think I clip, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I wonder if that is damaging to your equipment or what you listen to, because if so, that's kind of like a computer virus. If someone's on YouTube and you put on damaging noise to someone's speaker, that could be a good way to troll. An expensive way to troll at that. So this week I've caught up. I am a big fan of Sacha Baron Cohen. I love the Ali G show. I didn't grow up with it. A lot of it has been put on the internet, and I think that show is hilarious. I think the movie Borat and Bruno are both extremely funny. They crack me up. When I first saw them, I had laughed harder than I had in an extremely long time. I think Sacha Baron Cohen is extremely talented. And if anyone doesn't know who Sacha Baron Cohen is, or what his shtick is, I mean, I think he's an extremely talented performer aside from what his main thing is, but he basically dresses up as characters and he's very good at creating these personas, and he deceives people into thinking an interview is one thing when really it's another, and they become comfortable, and so they wind up saying outlandish things, and it sort of reveals a lot about their character. And it's just incredible what he can get people to do. And this show, he's got a new show out that I've caught up on. I've watched, I think 3 episodes are out right now. It's called Who Is America? And oh boy, I thought the Ali G show was crazy. This show really pushes the envelope. He upped the ante. It's way more ridiculous and also extremely cringy, but cringy in an entertaining way. Like, oh my gosh, is he really asking that, or is he? And I gotta say, I gotta hand it to the. Oh, how do I want to say this? It's hard to recapture the magic that the original had. And I'm not sure if I'm just nostalgic but I not really because I didn't grow up with the original. So I don't really think it's fair for me to say I'm looking through it through nostalgic goggles because I got into it like 3 years ago. I was watching it like 10 years before it came out. But I'm not saying it's a bad show. I think it's really, really good and I think it's really funny. And hats off to him for it. I really like it, but I think the characters aren't as great, or they're not the same. And that's not really a good criticism because oftentimes the only argument, like when people talk about how the book's always better than the movie, and their argument boils down to, well, it's different from the original, so it's not good. I'm not trying to hang my argument on the fact that it's different and therefore it's not as good. I just I'm not a movie critic, but the characters don't seem to be as likable. Borat was an extremely likable character. I think Bruno was great. Ali G was a legend. But you know, it is what it is. It's a good show. I would highly recommend checking it out if you're a fan, and if you're not a fan, I mean, I wouldn't start out with this. I would definitely watch Borat or something before that. I did see there was a story in LA where someone recognized him, and that's why he had to abort mission while doing it. And while I was entertained by the fact that, because I mean, Sacha Baron Cohen is without a doubt probably ruined a few careers in his time. So it was kind of interesting to see him get called out sometimes, and I wonder how often that happens. But someone was able to recognize your Borat, and he had to leave. But what upset me is the guy who called him out didn't really seem to. He wasn't able to laugh at himself. And there are different people who have come forward who had just realized they were a part of the Who Is America show and were like, and have come out and said, oh, they got me. Haha, funny. And a lot of them have been very good sports, and I think that's the best way to save face. The guy who caught him, I'm glad someone got to call him out just to tip the scales a little bit. But the guy who did it, you need to learn to laugh at yourself. You quit while you're ahead. You don't have to be acting like not all heroes wear capes. Some people discover a comedian undercover. Oh well. How much time I got? I got 6 minutes left. Luckily, I have a bonus section that I can talk about. So, I am doing my best to do off the grid August. I started about a week early regarding this. And from my understanding, what off the grid August is that you stay off social media. And I'm about to be a hypocrite because I think I told someone earlier to tweet at me if they, I don't know, if they were aware of, I don't even remember what I was saying. Regardless, from the way I understand it is off the grid August is you stay off social media. Some people go so far as to put their cell phones in a lockbox, which if I ever get to a point in my career where I can do that, that sounds pretty cool. So it's the third right now, but I started a week ago because I had read this book called How to Break Up with Your Cell Phone. Maybe I mentioned it a few shows ago, and it just talks about the benefits of not constantly getting your phone up and out of your pocket. And I stuck with it for a little bit, but it's hard to break up with your phone. And honestly, one of the biggest aspects of why cell phone use is so, or can be so harmful to your mental health. I mean, not in terms of putting you into an institution or anything, but studies overwhelmingly show that people who are less attached to their device tend to show higher levels of happiness and fulfillment. So I thought, I'll give that a try. So I got a week head start. I'm still on my phone a lot, and that's hard to give up. But I've blocked all social media accounts on my internet browser, on my laptop, and on my cell phone. I had deleted the apps about 2-3 months ago when I first read the book How to Break Up with Your Phone. And the book, as I said, really, it's not just the phone. Social media on the phone seems to be the main culprit, although I still do have the tendency to always pull out my phone and just even without social media on it. But I will say, the urge to get onto social media hasn't been as nearly as intense as I thought it would be. And now I'm not going to sit here and tell you it doesn't exist, but I don't get this fear of, oh, what's going on social media? What am I missing out on? Oh, I could be learning about stuff, and it's not there. Now, there are a lot of times where I'll just open up a new tab on my internet browser and I'll type in Facebook or I'll type in Twitter, and it'll just, the little thing up in the corner will say, oh, this is blocked. And I'll be like, oh, yeah. And the moment of being reminded why I'm doing this, and the reasons why are all in the book. There's too many to count, but there's just time after time how social media is kind of designed to addict you. Your phone is designed, every little part of it is designed to get you to come back and keep it in your pocket. The worst thing for me is when I put it down or I exit out a Facebook browser and then I instantly go right back on. Or even when you're on Facebook and you open a new tab and you go straight to Facebook, that's where it's like, okay, this isn't good. I probably shouldn't be on social media that much. But I'm not sure if I actually feel better as a result of cutting out social media, or if it's just an excuse for me to be smug. And I will happily admit that I probably sounded extremely smug there. But I think it's worth a try. I mean, when you think about it, I've been on social media since 2010. And to think that's a huge part of my life. And I've probably spent a lot of hours, and I've spent a lot of time distracted, missing out on things because I'm constantly glued to this screen that's in my pocket. And, this is just an experiment. I think, like I said, the apps themselves have been off my phone for a while, but I think those are definitely going to stay off. But I think after August is over, I'll probably get back on, see how I feel. There was an interesting test in the book that it had you do, was sit calmly and just take stock of how you feel at the moment. Then pick up your phone and take stock of how you feel again. And I was blown away. There was just like this rush that came over me as soon as I picked up the phone and lit up the screen. Oh, it was just, no, I don't know. It is kind of scary, but I don't think a lot of people talk about cell phone use and social media as if it's going to be the end of humanity. I don't think that's the case. I think it's like anything else. It can be beneficial to take a little break from it. Just give your mind a chance to go somewhere else. Plus, Mark Zuckerberg doesn't seem like the nicest guy in the world. Oh, I don't mean to just throw shade at him like that. Oh, well. So I think that's going to do it this week for the James Freel Show. I think this was a little bit of an improvement over the last two shows. Those were not very good. Enjoy your weekend, and just so you know, this is actually August 2nd. I pre-recorded this. That's why you didn't get the score for the Hall of Fame game. Take care, folks. I will talk to you next week, and keep an eye out for conversations with James Freel. See ya. Bye.